on here. We are also on Xiaotong and YouTube, so I'll give you a second to get to where you need to get to. 大家好，如果需要中文的话，你可以去小鹅通。And let me go ahead and get our slides up so that people can see what we're talking about today. Thank you once again for joining us. It's always a pleasure. Tuesdays are a wonderful time for us at InitialView. And today it's a very exciting time for me because I get to be a panelist as well. And we're going to talk about my favorite topic, which is talking about yourself, stories, and the importance of presenting yourself in an InitialView interview. And so as a reminder for nuts and bolts, we are going to talk a bit, but we are also going to make sure that we have time for questions. So if you have questions that are immediately in your head right now, you can go ahead and type in the Q&A box at any point. And that way we can kind of see the questions and hopefully fold them into our presentation. But we also plan to have time at the end. So you can go ahead and use the chat box and the Q&A box. We will also ask a chat question, so have your chat box ready and make sure that you have it on panelists and attendees so that everybody can see your answer. That would be great. And then we will be playing Spot Mr. View. So if you see, you just pay attention to my little window, okay? So if you see Mr. View, take a quick screenshot and email it as quickly as you can. The first 3 people who email us get a t-shirt. We've been sending those out. We've been excited that you guys are participating in this game and hope that it's making these presentations a little bit more entertaining. Once again, thank you so much to all of the partner schools, the Tuesday Talk partner schools. We can only be doing this many Tuesday Talks because of your support. Thank you for inviting your friends, your students, your parents, families. Please help us keep getting the word out. And the admissions officers that come on these talks with us, they are very grateful for your support as well. And they get to meet you and your classmates, and that's really awesome. All right, well, I am very excited today. I have 2, they've become dear friends of mine. And I went to school in Boston, so it's always fun for me to get together with Boston people, and especially Wellesley, that's my alma mater. So, but Milena and Samantha have been very gracious to join me on this particular talk since it's such an important topic for me. And so thank you so much. I'm going to let them introduce themselves briefly, and then we'll just dive right in.
Okay, I will go first. So my name is Samantha Fifield, and I am an Assistant Director of International Admissions at Boston University. I've been working there for about 10 years now, so a while. BU is also my alma mater, so I have experience both as a student and as an admissions officer. If you aren't too familiar with BU, I can just give you like 3 quick things to remember about the university. So we are a large, private, top tier 1 research institution right in the heart of the city of Boston. I'd say if you had to remember 3 things about BU, my 3 favorite things are flexible academics. We offer over 300 different programs of study across 10 undergraduate schools and colleges, and you are not limited to any academic program that you want to take. You can major and minor across schools and colleges, double major, change your mind whenever you want, basically just take classes for fun in another school or college. So it's super, super flexible, which is something that not all schools are able to offer. So I love that, especially for students who aren't 100% sure what they want to do or students who have multiple interests. We also have a thriving, wonderful international student community. 24% of our undergraduates are international students, so it puts us in the top 10 in the US for hosting the most international students on our campus. We love our international students. We support our international students in a lot of ways, from job fairs targeted at international students to everything to setting up a bank account or helping you get a driver's license when you first get to the US. There's a lot of love for that community. And then lastly, just our beautiful campus. I mean, you can see kind of from the picture, that little red triangle is the Citgo sign. It's kind of a Boston landmark. And heading up the street, even beyond the picture, is Boston University's campus. So we're about a mile-long stretch of Comm Ave. All of our buildings are located in one place. There's public transportation that runs right down the middle of our campus in and around the city as well. So it's really, really convenient. You kind of get the best of both worlds, being in a big city, having all the resources and opportunities that that has to offer, while at the same time having that kind of small school feel with all of our buildings concentrated on just one street. So those are just a few things to know about Boston University. There's a lot more I could tell you, but if you have any questions, feel free to contact me. We'll talk more about our schools a little bit later. Thank you.
Thanks, Sam, and thanks to Gloria and InitialView for inviting us. My name is Milena Mareva. I am an Associate Director of Admission at Wellesley College, which is also my alma mater, where I studied as an international student, originally from Bulgaria. And now I get to coordinate our international recruitment and admission process. So Samantha and I can talk all day about our institutions, but I'll be brief as well. I'll leave you with just a few things that are special about Wellesley. The first is, of course, our focus. We are a premier liberal arts and sciences institution that is empowering women to make a difference in the world. So we believe that confident and educated women are the most powerful engine for social change. Another special thing about Wellesley, we are sitting on a breathtakingly beautiful campus, which is right outside of Boston. So it's a great location, allows our students to enjoy the beauty of this great landscape, but also be part of this tremendous student community and research community. And because of this proximity, we offer cross-registration with MIT, Babson, Brandeis, and Olin. Another thing you should remember about Wellesley is our community and the diversity of our community. With about 2,300 students, we're an undergraduate institution, and we are a relatively small campus, but we're one of the most diverse residential campuses in the US. So you get to share it with students from all over the world, more than 80 different countries, and 14% of our students are international. So you will have a community with a very distinctly cosmopolitan feel, and you are gonna feel like me, welcome there from day one. It's very easy to make Wellesley a home away from home. And this diversity that Sam and I are talking about really drives the learning process on our campuses. So although we are a relatively small institution, you will find at Wellesley research opportunities and technology and research collaborations that you typically would find at large research universities. So they are there exclusively for our undergraduate students. And it's a very hands-on experience. And the last thing I'll leave you with is that Wellesley is known as a leadership lab for young women. So we have this long history of developing leaders across a wide variety of fields and at every level. So these include some famous women like Hillary Clinton, Mei-Ling Song, Chinese poet Bing Xing, and InitialView co-founder Gloria Chu. So Wellesley believes that leadership is a skill. It's not necessarily something you're born with. And we have tremendous opportunities on the campus to help you learn leadership and practice leadership, because students run pretty much the entire campus and are sitting at every level of the organization. So if you're someone who's eager to make a difference and to affect change, you will be right at home at Wellesley, and I invite you to follow us on WeChat and visit our website and attend our events to learn more. But today we'll be focusing on interviews and the review process. So I'll hand it back to Gloria.
Wonderful. Well, my name is Gloria, as most of you know, but I get to introduce myself today as well. I am one of the co-founders for InitialView, and I know lots of people know of InitialView. That's why you're here, but you may just know us as the Tuesday Talk platform. And actually what we really do is interview people. So real quickly, we are an interview platform. We've been doing this for 10 years. And we are trusted by many admissions offices around the world, especially in the US. And it's just an opportunity for you to tell your story. and it validates everything you've done. And it shows itself as a conversation and a writing sample. So we have a 15-minute conversation with one of our interviewers. Everyone is different because you all are different. And then there is a 20-minute typed response to an open-ended prompt. So you'll have a question, you read it, and then you answer it in 20 minutes. So we're going to talk a little bit more about what that feels like, what that looks like on your end, and what admissions officers are hoping to get out of you from that. But that's the gist. That's what we do here at InitialView. That's our core kind of product. We've been doing this for a long time, and so we have students from over 120 countries do InitialView, and interviews are provided to over 500 programs, again, mostly in the US, and over 350,000 applications have included an InitialView interview. So that's kind of what we do. We'll get into the nitty-gritty in a second. But as all of you who've been attending Tuesday Talks know, we talk about holistic admissions all the time, and how, especially in the US, very different than many parts of the world, we are looking at different aspects of who you are as we review. So I'm not the expert. I only hear from admissions officers. So Milena and Samantha are going to tell us a little bit more once more about holistic admissions and how they consider these components when they review applications. So Milena, do you want to dive in?
Sure. So I've been excited about holistic admissions since I was a prospective student, and I kind of discovered US liberal arts colleges because I was considering at the time options in Europe. And for any of these, I would have had to sit for 1 or 2 exams, and based on the results of these and my diploma, get a placement in a program, spend about 4 or 5 years focusing on one major and graduate with that degree. So I was really excited by the idea that there are institutions out there who care more about my entire profile as a scholar, but also a person, and are interested in all of these different pieces that would make me a good student in college or university. And so in that sense, the process in the US is unique because it is trying to tie all of these different components so that we put together communities that will thrive on campus. And first and foremost, of course, these are academic communities, because as you heard Sam talk about the liberal arts program and the flexibility at Boston University, and myself about the research opportunities. So we are looking for students with really great academic foundation. And so the first, if you will, the first piece of the puzzle is your transcript, right? Because your transcript reflects your foundation in the different areas of the high school curriculum. Those are math, science, foreign language or English, depends on where you're applying from, and your native language, literature courses, and social studies and history. So those are the 5 areas that are they're going to be the foundation of how you study in college. We want to make sure that we bring students who are well prepared so they can take advantage of the curriculum, be able to deal with any requirements that we have. But also students, so that's like the very basic level, are you qualified to be successful on our campuses? The second question that we ask as part of the holistic admission process is, are you going to take full advantage of all of these exciting opportunities that we offer, right? So all of the academic breadth, all of the flexibility of these curricula, all of the ability to do research collaboratively with your faculty. So we're looking for students who would be good partners, right, for faculty. And to some extent that comes from that second piece that appeared on the screen, which is your recommendations, right? We hear from your teachers who you are in the classroom, how you approach your assignments, what kinds of questions are interesting to you to explore. And so that gives us an indication who you would be as part of our classrooms. for those of us who have small classrooms, that ability to engage with your faculty and with your peers in a dialogue, in a conversation that is educational for everyone around you, is also really important. So from the recommendations, we can glean pieces that are not available on the transcript, right? The transcript would tell us how successful you have been, to what extent you've taken the advantage of the most challenging opportunities available to you, and the recommendations would provide some narrative. And so in that academic persona that we're trying to appreciate, tests are part of it. And I would say we put them last, the last piece of the puzzle for the academic piece, academic sort of side of the process, because testing is the least important of all of these. Has been the one standardized component. So to some extent, it has helped us appreciate how students from very different parts of the world and very different curricula kind of are prepared for the same, or demonstrate the same types of skills, like being able to read a complicated text and interpret correctly the things that are the ideas in that text, or do have quantitative skills. So those are the things that tests help us. And I would say many of us have gone test optional in the past cycle, and are going to remain test optional because the pandemic has really limited students' choices as to or ability to take tests, and we don't want to force them to, because that has always been the least important component, and the one that we review with the biggest grain of salt, if you will, because again, there's a variation in preparation in different parts of the world, and a strong score from France may not be necessarily a strong SAT score in the US. So we have always appreciated that nuance and that variation. But apart from your academic persona, as we mentioned, you are a member of the community. And so these very exciting other pieces are also matter in the application process, and I will let Sam touch upon some of them.
Yeah, thank you, Milena. That was a great introduction. I completely agree with everything Milena said. There is definitely that important, more quantitative part of your application, especially your transcript. It sets the foundation, right? I mean, the goal is for us to admit students that are going to be able to do the coursework when they come to campus, that are going to thrive and go on to do great things, right? So the transcript is definitely important, that quantitative piece. But the qualitative piece also, finding out who you are as a person, finding out how you would fit into our community, that is also equally as an important part of your application. So starting with this next puzzle piece, essays. So this is one of my favorite parts of the application for sure, because this is where we start to get a little bit of a sense of your personality. What are you going to tell us that's not on your transcript, that's not on your list of activities? How are you going to phrase it? Is there a little bit of your personality infused into their essay? There should be. If there isn't, a little bit of your personality is what we're here for, right? I mean, this is where we get to know you a little bit better as a whole human being. And so I think the essays are a great place to do that. It's really up to you what you want to write about. Obviously, that's one of the best things, and probably one of the most frustrating things about essays in the US is we don't really tell you exactly what we want to see. We kind of leave it up to you. So there's a lot of directions you could go with it. But as long as we're learning something about you that we wouldn't get from any other part of your application, as long as your essay is strong and there aren't a lot of really obvious, simple kinds of mistakes, it's probably going to be a pretty solid essay. The next one is your supplemental essay. So just as important as your main essay, if not even more important at times, this is a way for us to judge how well you know our university and what your interests really are when it comes to applying to our particular institution. So supplemental essays are important. It's important to make sure that you read the prompt, make sure that you know that you are answering exactly the question that is being asked. And it's important to do your research. It's really easy for us to tell as admissions officers if you've kind of copy and pasted the typical, why do you want to come to our school supplemental essay? And that does not help you. What helps you is to say, you know, I've done my research. Here's a class that you offer that I'm really excited about taking. Here's a study abroad program that looks great. You know, I'd love to get in touch with this professor doing really interesting research. You know, those are the kinds of things that really show us, okay, wow, they've really done their research. They're really interested in our institution. They could be a really good fit because clearly they know a lot about us. And so, you know, we want students who are really excited to be on our campus. So that's something else that we look for in those supplemental essays. And again, a continuation of that, just kind of that personality aspect that we like to see. And then the last one, obviously, is your activities. So again, this is just another way to get to know you. You know, there's so much that can be done in the span of your 3 or 4 year high school career. And so, you know, we do look at it with nuance. Obviously, there are just different kinds of cultures, different kinds of, you know, cultures within schools, between countries, about the emphasis that is put on your kind of extracurricular activities. It's really common and encouraged in some places, and it's kind of less encouraged or less common in other places, and that's fine. You know, we don't expect you to, you know, if it's not the culture at your school, we don't expect you to be going, you know, absolutely above and beyond with something that's, you know, not really part of your school culture. But at the same time, we do want to see some kind of commitment, some kind of involvement in your community, whether that's some kind of volunteer work, whether you've been, you know, going out to get an internship, whether you've been just involved at the different clubs at your school, if your school has a lot of clubs. You know, that's what we want to see, just that you would be an engaging member of the community. We don't want somebody who's going to come and just stare at their books for 4 years at our school. You know, we want you to bring something to our university. We want you to mix it up. We want you to challenge the students on our campus and bring your own uniqueness to our lives. And so I think that's why activities are also an important part of the application. But obviously with the pandemic as well, you know, that's going to change. We're not going to expect you to have, you know, consistent activities necessarily over 3 or 4 years. We're going to look at that with nuance as well. So nuance is the key word. But all of these things are definitely important. And I'll give it to Gloria for the final piece, very important.
Woo! I mean, I know all these things. I've heard these puzzle pieces over and over again, but I always still love hearing it because it really makes this last puzzle piece that much more important, because the nuance, like Sam just said over and over again, is what's going to be important and helps give admissions officers that context that they are needing and looking for. They have many ways to find that out, and we at InitialView really try to help by giving them other information. You know, all you partner schools, so the information that you give me, I'm able to kind of pass that along as well. But the interview is a chance for you, student, to be able to give that context, for you to be able to tie all these puzzle pieces together to make that complete picture a little bit clearer. Be able to hear your actual voice and see your actual voice. That is really important. To explain what happened during COVID, to maybe insert something that didn't kind of fit the rest of these puzzle pieces, but is so much a part of you. And so we're excited to play that role, and we would love for you to ask questions about how to kind of make the most of your opportunity. Milena, did you have something to add?
Yes, I just wanted to add, Gloria, that one of the other components, particularly as it relates to international students, is their English proficiency. So a lot of us are expecting students from day one to engage in you know, academic level conversation or in social conversations on campus. So as students arrive, right? So a lot of us don't have the English as a second language support. And particularly for that type of institution, establishing your English proficiency in some way is a really big part of the process. So you might expect to see either a requirement or a strong recommendation if you have not spent your full high school experience in an English-based curriculum to take some sort of English proficiency. And some of us, like Wellesley, for example, we accept InitialView as an English proficiency instrument because it's very clear for us. You know, your ability to speak well and to write well and to reflect is made very clear through an InitialView interview. So I just wanted to point that out, that it's, you know, it serves all of these as a tool to establish all of these qualities that you mentioned, Gloria, but English proficiency for some of us as well.
Wonderful. Thanks for adding that. And in fact, I pulled some screenshots because I think a lot of people always ask, like, where does it say that we're supposed to do initial view? And sometimes it says it in a very obvious place, and sometimes it's not in an obvious place. And sometimes you'll get an email, but I just wanted you to kind of get a sense of, like, they're on websites, the mention of an initial view interview. But I wanted to kind of tease out a little bit of why people are saying it, just so that it's consistent with what we've just been talking about: personality, likes and dislikes, language proficiency, the academic and personal background. That's really important because you are coming from a country that is not the US for most of you here. But even if you are in the US and you're an international student, your background is really important, of like, when did you come to the US? How did you kind of dive into the curriculum? How was it different? This is all really important information that you can share. Academic interest and potential fit. One thing that's kind of not always in that puzzle is institutions have kind of institutional goals and things that where they need to kind of figure out how, it's not even just whether or not you're admissible, but also how are you going to fit into the class that they're shaping. So that can be told in your story, or that can be heard in your story. And then the whole idea of knowing you personally, it's just really hard to do that by just reading about you. And so having that unfiltered voice, this is the only time in the application process where there's a little bit of you're able to visualize the interaction. You're able to see the interaction, because everything else is curated and edited, and then the admissions officer just sees the final product. But being able to see kind of what happens in a conversation, what happens in a back and forth, how does that work? And again, like, it's not even just about English, but it's just communication, period, right? Because everyone wants to be a more compelling communicator. And if you're a compelling communicator, you're going to do well on these campuses. So you've heard a lot of stuff from us, and I just want to break up the session a little bit. So get your chat boxes open. And based on what you've heard right now, what is the purpose of the interview and writing sample? Go ahead and type in the chat box. I'm going to give you guys a second to find it. And I'm also going to make sure that if people are typing in another platform. What is the purpose of the interview and writing sample? Don't be shy. Okay, let the admission officer further know who you are. Great. What else? It shows your personality. It does indeed show your personality. You're going to learn more about, admissions officers are going to learn more about students beyond the grades, the curriculum, the test scores, and activities. It's a first-hand view of the applicant, and no unedited writing skills. That is very important. We're going to talk about that a little bit more. Reveals your academic interests, and then check if you are fit in the college culture environment. These are great. Good job, guys. You're listening. Yay. I'm just going to put a few more of these up here. We've talked about them on some level. Life is not a test. You're right. Intellectual depth is something that many admissions officers have told me that is important to them, intellectual depth and curiosity, and that is not measured in a test score. It's really hard to see that. It's sometimes hard to measure in grades, to be honest. Like, we want to see what really matters to you and whether or not you grasp something and how excited you are to keep grasping it. Those are great. Engagement is huge, because as both Melina, and Sam can attest to, you're going to have a lot of collaborative opportunities. And so your ability to kind of engage and be a part of that is going to make your experience is going to be that much better. And obviously they want you to have a good experience. It's not just about whether, them making a class, but their hope is that you will have a satisfying and successful time at their campus. Authenticity. So I saw some people post that in the chat. Authenticity is huge. Being able to assess the student's ability to write and talk in an authentic and consistent voice, that's going to be important. These are qualitative components, and unfortunately, no one has figured out yet how to quantify qualitative components. And so this is a really important piece of the conversation here. So I want to ask, because I know a lot of the attendees here tonight, this afternoon, wherever you are curious, what does review look like in your office? And so maybe Melina, do you want to start real quick? Kind of give us a sense of what happens in your office with these files that you get.
Yes. So we really want to get to know the candidates who are applying to Wellesley, and we have several rounds of review, actually. The first round consists of sort of a regional coordinator for a particular area. We split the world and the United States in different regions, and we have sort of experts in each of those who understand the curricula offered there, can interpret the strength of academics for different applicants, or even understand what are some of the typical engagements outside of the classroom, and kind of explain that to the rest of the team. So this first round of review is usually 2 admission officers together, one of them being the regional expert, and talking about all of the applications that they are considering, and kind of every component of the application. We also watch the interviews, and we pause and we share with each other, and it's a conversation. And we're trying to figure out, again, all these different things. Is the candidate strong in our pool? Is the candidate a good fit for us? And so from there, we have team-based reviews with a lot of our staff, the admission staff, who read different regions. And we sort of calibrate the reviews across different regions. And we arrive at the group of students we most want to admit, because there are always invariably tremendously qualified students every year that we're not able to admit. There's lots of people who can do the work, and we can't admit all of them. So it's a very hard process in the latter stages. I can also tell you there are no quotas for any of those regions that I mentioned. We are not reading so we can have sort of a certain number come from each region, but rather so we have the most expert review and people who have read with a history in the region, and can provide that good context for our colleagues.
Thank you. And Sam, do you want to add to that, since your institution is a little bit different? You have a larger student body.
Pretty significant applicant pool. We had over 70,000 applications come in last year, so it was a pretty big jump for us. It's a record for us. But yeah, definitely. I mean, Melina and I, we have a lot in common, our 2 institutions, the way that we do things. I totally agree that there are no quotas. We're not looking to fill any particular number of students from a certain region. We're just looking to find kind of the best and most qualified, the best fit students coming from all around the world. We have a slightly different process in that it's typically just one person. So the regional expert, so to speak, the person who's most in touch with that region will read those students' applications. And then it goes on to, depending on the strength of the file or the fit for the university, it goes on to, it could be several committees beyond that, where multiple people on the Board of Admissions are looking at and reviewing the file, sometimes with, the regional representative there as well to give context when needed. That being said, given the size of the applicant pool, we really aren't able to kind of sit and watch these through as much as I wish that we could. If I were able to, I would just sit and watch every single student's entire initial view. But unfortunately, what it more ends up looking like, just due to time constraints, is everybody can do it a little bit differently, but you kind of skip around a little bit. So the great thing that I love about InitialView is that they really, parse out the interview questions, so you can see if there's a particular question that looks really interesting. You're like, what? You auditioned for a music show when you were 15. Tell me more about that. What was that about? Or whatever the question might be. But you also have a notable question, which is a question that you, as the applicant, have gone through and you kind of looked at your entire interview and said, I think that I answered this question particularly well, or this is something that I definitely want the admissions officer to hear. And so we, as we're skimming through, I tend to start with just the first question and hear how the student kind of introduces themselves. Sometimes they're, a little bit nervous. It takes them a little while to warm up. So it's good to hear kind of where they start. And then kind of skipping through maybe another question that I find interesting or their notable question to see how they're progressing throughout the interview. And then I like to see a little bit at the end, it asks, is there anything else that you want, the admissions officers to know about? And it's like, yeah, of course, I want to hear a little bit about that as well. And so sometimes I'll skip to that. And so it gives me just enough of these different pieces of conversations, a few minutes worth of conversation to be able to cull a little bit of the student's personality, of their comfort level speaking, of their potential fit for the university. And it's really, really helpful. So I'm glad that we're going to get to see some examples of these soon.
Yay. So I just have a quick screenshot of what it kind of looks like for most offices. Now, this is a particular software, a reading software that many admissions officers use. I know BU uses something different, but it is still similar in that if you have an InitialView interview, it's readily available in the file. And many actually just go ahead and click play and have it kind of playing in the background when they're looking at some of the other components of your application. Again, it's that nuance that we talked about earlier of being able to tie something in when you hear it and see it together. It puts that puzzle piece back together. And we've tried really hard to make it technically easy so that admissions officers in their very tight time frame can still get a glimpse of who you are. Wonderful. So we are going to dive into a few examples. And Sam is going to start with this one. With each of these, we're going to play a real quick clip so that you can just hear the student's voice. And then, yeah, again, if you have questions, you should go ahead and ask them now, okay?
There are other things that you enjoy doing with your time as well.
Okay, so there are two more about it. First is photography, and the second one is running. So maybe I would tell you about running first. I do that, yeah. So actually, I was pretty corpulous when I was 9th grade, and I chose to run because I thought I cannot do it. And I'm kind of person that insists to do something and persists to do everything that other people say I can't. So at first, when I was in middle school, I just ran laps, ordinary with the PE class. And I thought it's pretty tired. But after entering high school, I thought, oh, our high school playground is pretty big, and maybe I can try running on there. And from 1 kilometer per time, I feel tired, to now I can run a half marathon.
All righty. So, so Sam, tell us a little bit about this student.
Yeah, so I really like this example because, we always talk about wanting to see your personality. We want to talk about wanting to get to know you better. This student I really liked because he was not that kind of like overly effusive, like tons of like cheerleader kind of personality. He was like very kind of shy and reserved, especially in the beginning. It took him a little while to kind of find his groove. But at the same time, he was true to himself. He was authentic. You still definitely got a sense of his lovely personality, and that worked in his favor. His English is not perfect, but that's okay. He can still carry on a conversation. We completely understand his meaning. I love that he was. You can notice that this was his notable question. This is what he wanted us to hear. And it really also shows grit, the fact that he wanted to take something on that he knew he would be bad at, and really just wanted to persevere, that he's, when somebody tells him he can't do something, that just gives him more motivation. And, that's great. That's a quality that we want to have in our students as well. I mean, that's a life skill that's going to benefit anybody. And so I think that, those things, even though it's small, you know, he's not inventing the next Apple or anything like that. He's just talking about how he came to love running, and you know, it's wonderful in its kind of ordinariness, and at the same time, it's given us everything that we need to know about his personality, about, you know, things that we wouldn't necessarily get from his transcript from just reading about his love of running on his list of extracurricular activities. This puts it in a little bit of a different context, and I found that to be really helpful for this particular interview. Oh, the other aspect I wanted to note, sorry, yeah, sorry, Gloria, was that this student was, he applied to anthropology, but he took mostly math and science AP courses, just as a matter of what was offered at his school. There just weren't a lot of social science AP courses. So it was good for us to see that, you know, he did have those English skills that, you know, typically we assess English not only through, you know, TOEFL exam scores or IELTS or the Duolingo English test, but also through your coursework. So if we're lacking those kind of, you know, high level social science courses, it can sometimes be a little bit of a question mark how strong your speaking or your English might actually be. But in this case, you know, the fact that he had math and science AP courses, plus he gave us this InitialView interview, just gave us that much more confidence in his ability to do well in a social science program. So that was the other thing that was important to note. Thank you.
All right, here's example 2.
What else do you do that makes you who you are? What else is really important to you?
Pastry. I think actually when I was like in primary school, my parents always tell me you need to learn how to cook. But I'm not really interested in cooking because like I can eat whatever. I'm not very interested in food. I can survive with just basic food. But then it's in my middle school. It's during a Christmas vacation. Like one of my friends invited me to her house and we did pastry together. I remember it's like cookies, like bear-shaped cookies. And that experience is really amazing because I realized cooking is not just about the product, it's about the process.
Yeah,
and like
very much.
Making pastry with friends is even more interesting because like there is something about sharing and, you know, it's just like fun.
So why are you so interested in pastry? There's a lot of kinds of cooking or baking. And pastry is perhaps the most difficult of the baking. So why pastry?
I think it says something about my personality. I'm not really good at Chinese style cooking because when my mom tell me get a pinch of salt into the plate, I really don't know what a pinch means.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but pastry is more like under control. Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, Milena, tell us a little bit about why you like this interview.
Yeah, well, I mean, I just think it's so lovely to have the student be like really honest about what she likes doing in her free time. And we could actually imagine her as a member of our community. There are a lot of people who like baking or enjoying the products of baking on campus, and it's a great bonding experience. And it sounds like the student has an appreciation of this experience, but also in a larger way of how working together with others makes things more fun. So we, you know, kind of imagine that specific thing that she would be doing perhaps, but also within the broader the broader philosophy of a residential community as well. And also, you know, it was this student has a very impressive academic profile and a great resume, which we were able to appreciate through some of her other answers in her application. But this was sort of a side answer, something that we didn't know about her. And it wasn't something she's really great at. Like, you know, even the interviewer, he was like, so why baking? Like, you know, maybe even as a way to provide, maybe she was like this great baker and she can give this very like high level response. But she was like, no, I mean, you know, I just love baking. And it sounded like herself. So we felt like we were sitting with this student in the room. It wasn't an inflated answer trying to like make her seem impressive. And that really resonates with us. We recognize you guys are people and we want to meet you. And this is a great opportunity to do that.
And this student did the interview a few years ago when we still had handwritten writing samples. We now do them typed, but we did want to show you a bit of her writing sample, because I know that there's some questions about, wait, what is the InitialView writing sample? So Melina, do you want to touch on this?
Yes, so this was also an excellent writing sample. You can see that, first of all, the student responded to the question in the prompt, which is something I really encourage you to do, because we see actually a lot of examples of students trying to fit some of their impressive achievements into the prompt. So you don't have to do that, right? So you've already provided information about your impressive achievements elsewhere. This is a great opportunity to answer to a question that's going to be not a typical question. And Gloria and her team come up with these really fun prompts. So try to enjoy it, trying to embrace it. And along the way, we are going to look for good sentence structure, good argument structure, which this student in particular was able to provide. It doesn't have to be a perfect sample. It doesn't have to be perfect grammatically or in any other way. As you can see here on the paper, she was like editing herself, which is also a great thing. It's definitely an iterative process, even when you're typing it. So those maybe 3 things that you take away. Try to answer the prompt, pay attention to good grammatical and sentence structure, and to good argument structure.
Wonderful. Whoops. All right, so example 3. Let's listen.
Tell me about your week. How's your week going so far?
Yeah, it's going great. Recently, yesterday I just watched a movie and I read an interview about it.
Okay.
And the whole week I just started to wear my new toothbrush. It kind of hurts, but I'm doing fine. And I'm in the program, a sociology program, and it is kind of like the final week. So I'm writing a project. I've been busy, but yeah, I almost finished it. And tomorrow I will present it. It's like an oral presentation to the professor, and that's the final. That's the last thing I need to do of the program. Yeah, so I'm doing great.
Cool.
All right. So Sam, tell us a little bit more.
Yeah, so this student, he really just kind of drew me in right from the beginning. You can tell that his answers weren't overly curated, right? He really was just talking kind of like a stream of consciousness. How am I doing? Well, I got braces and they hurt. Like that's so relatable. Like I totally get it. That could be a little bit of a downer part of your week, and yet he's very upright and very like positive and upbeat. And so even as you continue on through the interview, he just like the personality is just always there, effusive. He's kind of like not the antithesis, but like the opposite of the previous student that I talked about, who was definitely more reserved, a little bit shyer. And the student is just putting it all out there. So he pulled me right from the start. I love that his answers are definitely authentic, not perfect. Again, you notice that, sometimes he would stop and start with his sentences a little bit. Again, this is the beginning, so he might just be warming up a little bit. But it's imperfect in a very endearing way and in a very authentic way. He also sometimes later in the interview, he has to stop and think about some of the answers to the questions posed to him. So like he was asked a question, he said, that's interesting, let me think about that for a minute. And he just sat for 10 seconds and he just thought about it. And I love that he felt comfortable doing that. We don't always expect you to have an answer ready right at the top of your head. These are sometimes, tricky questions that you need to think about. Maybe just you hadn't thought about them before. That happens a lot. And so to just say like, I need a second to think about that and take 5 or 10 seconds, that's great. You can definitely feel free to do that. With regard to, where he was coming from and why this was particularly helpful to us, he was coming from a little bit of an unknown school. So, there are some schools that we've kind of developed a relationship with over time. Some of them were able to, give high school visits and visit. And there were just too many schools, though, for us to be able to do that for all of them. And so this is a school where we hadn't had that many students apply to the university previously. We didn't have really a good handle on the curriculum or the English level of students coming. It was a national curriculum school, so he was studying for the Gaokao. It wasn't a particularly English-based program, so that's always something that we're noting. We're looking obviously at your English proficiency scores, but sometimes that doesn't tell the whole story. So it's good for us to have that little extra piece, especially with students coming out of the national curriculum. So it was, this was incredibly, incredibly helpful to us to be able to see, yeah, not only can he carry on a conversation, his personality is amazing. He takes on some kind of difficult topics throughout his interview, which was good for us to see. And, he would be bringing a lot to the community. Without an initial view, we might not have considered him so strongly. He was applying to sociology as well, another social science program. So given that kind of unknown factor of the school, having this initial view interview definitely kind of helped us make that decision a lot easier than had we not had it. He actually applied early decision as well. So we are thrilled to have him coming and joining us on campus this fall. So yay.
Awesome.
Tell me about your.
All right, and this is the last example that we have, and then we have a few things of homework, and so I do see questions, and I want to try to get to them. So let's listen real quick.
If I came to your high school, who would be the first person you'd introduce me to?
My econ teacher. She is someone I just met this year, but she has definitely been one of the most influential people to me. She is actually a Wellesley graduate. She's someone who inspires me a lot just because we come from the same background, but we have quite different interests, but she's kind of someone who inspires me for her passion and her drive because she is someone who's very rational, knows what she's doing, is involved in a lot of things, very pragmatic, diplomatic, and I think that if I were to introduce her to anyone, she'd be able to cater to them, whether it be my parents or teachers or a friend. She'd have a really good time with them. So. Okay,
great. And how do you think she would describe you as a student?
She actually used this word for me once, which is multi-dimensional. And she told me it's because you have the capacity to understand people like other people don't, and that's what makes you a good leader, because you're able to, with other people, there's one side of them, but you can relate to them, but that it doesn't mean that aspect is all you are. You have a lot of dimensions of you that make you personable and easy to interact with a lot of people.
Awesome. So, okay, Milena, tell us.
If I came to your high school, who would be?
I mean, I think that the response speaks for itself with the level of nuance and insight that the student demonstrates into the character of her teacher, but her own self-awareness. And it kind of again, it allows us to get to know her from the very first question, but also to understand her intellectual depth and curiosity about other people, self-discovery, and through other parts of the interview, we also learn how multidimensional her interests are, that she is studying econ at an advanced level, but also, wants to major in English. So in terms of a fit for a liberal arts curriculum, she gives us great material to be able to advocate for her in our process. And of course, that, the ability to get to know her ties it all together.
Fantastic. Now, there are some questions about the writing sample. We mentioned it a little bit earlier, but just a few additional thoughts here. We do now have it typed, and I have heard from these two, but also many others. They're like, thank you, thank you, thank you. We can read these much better. We can glance at them quickly and have an understanding of the writing ability. But we'd like to show you kind of the handwritten ones too, because it is an iterative process no matter which way you're doing it. And in typing, you're deleting, you're rewriting, and there's no word limit to this. The topics, somebody asked, what are the topics? The typical topics, they're not really typical topics. They're not an academic question. So don't worry, don't think about it as like a test where you're like, oh no, I need to know a certain content for this writing. It is an open-ended, there's no right or wrong question. So there is room for critical thinking, creativity. There's room for personality. There's room for, but at the end of the day, these admissions officers are looking for a consistency in voice. They're looking for authenticity. They're looking for, can you put together some thoughts in a short amount of time on paper? I know, Melina, you might have some comments on this, or Sam, if you have any comments as well about the writing sample.
No, I mean, we
or
definitely,
did I cover it?
That just about covers it, yeah. No, but I love the writing sample. I love the prompts that you give, because again, it kind of prompts them to think in, you know, a way that does show their personality or their life experiences that wouldn't be found anywhere else on the application. And I love that the writing samples do not have to be perfect. Like, you know, we very much expect that they're going to be different from the essays that you've worked on, that you've edited, that you've shown to your counselors, you know, that are part of your essay. Those are going to be much more curated. This is just a way for us to, again, get a sense of your writing skills on the fly, continuing with that personality aspect. So, you know, don't feel like they have to be perfect essays similar to your writing on your application for us to consider them a plus. You know, they're just the fact that you're doing InitialView is a plus, and the writing sample as well. You know, it's good for us to get a sense of your writing on the fly, and also just continuing with the personality, I'd say.
Wonderful. So, you know, I'm just going to put some things up here about how to prepare. And I know some people have logged into this hoping that I would give you some like pitfalls. So the biggest pitfall for InitialView is people over preparing and memorizing and reading. Okay, so do not do that. I think a lot of people have said, you know, they want to be so prepared, but today both Melina and Samantha mentioned the importance of just being yourself and being authentic, and how that pause, that thoughtfulness, that like, I don't have an answer immediately, is actually endearing. It's actually something where you're like, oh, I'm sitting in the room with them. And of course they don't have an automatic answer to every question that I might ask. So, so think about all these things. Do expect follow-up questions. We do not like to do just a question and an answer. We do like, because we want to give you an opportunity to actually go a little deeper than your initial answer. So these are kind of things to think about when you're preparing. At the end of the day, I want you to really be authentic. And there have been questions like, who, you know, wait, I'm confused. Does BU doesn't do interviews? BU doesn't do interviews in the traditional sense. So Sam, do you want to cover that real quick?
Yeah, no, that's very true. Like I said, we have a really large applicant pool. There's just no way that we could possibly, you know, in-house perform all of our interviews for all of our applicants. So InitialView, you know, these third-party interview services, InitialView in particular is great because, you know, we put it up on our website as an option. It's not a requirement for any student. But we say, you know, if you want to kind of add to your application, if you want to go the extra mile, submit this extra piece, you know, we're more than happy to look at it. And so that only, you know, that shows us that students are willing to go above and beyond the minimum requirements of applying to our institution. So that's both like showing kind of interest in our university, but also, you know, showing that they have kind of confidence in their abilities to just have a conversation in English, and that really means a lot to our process as well. So we're really, really grateful to have, you know, InitialView and these third-party interviews to be able to help us do something that we could not accomplish in-house.
Wonderful. So we only have a few minutes left, but we do have some homework for you. So the first thing is like starting a journal. We really want you to be like reflective, because this is going to help you not just for InitialView, but just for life in general. Being reflective helps you be able to be a compelling communicator, a good teammate, a good colleague, a good, like all these things. And so a real easy way to practice for the writing sample, honestly, is just ask yourself a random question every day and write for 20 minutes. And to show that to someone and give, ask for feedback. Ask for feedback. This is something that is going to be helpful for you with regards to the interview as well. If you think about some key points that are important to you and write about like why it's important and how it's important to you, but then you just want to throw the piece of paper away and then you want to find someone to actually have a conversation with. The wonderful thing about technology right now is you can actually record these conversations. I'm going to watch this recording afterwards and kind of critique myself and be like, oh, I shouldn't have done that. I should have, you know, which is not terrible. You don't want to beat yourself up over it, but you definitely do want to watch yourself. Find someone who's going to be able to watch it with you and say, you don't know why you like math. You know, you're good at it, but you don't know how to explain it to some other person and make them excited about it with you. Those are the types of things that you want to try to grab at. Or it may just be like, I don't ever look at the camera or look at the person that I'm talking to. I just have this like weird thing where I'm always looking down. These are great things. My issue, I say like and all the time. And I'm working on it and I continue to work on it. These are all things that are going to be helpful beyond college application, which is why I love this topic so much, because this is not just for getting in. This is for you to become more confident and excited about kind of your life ahead. So I am so sorry that we've run out of time. And I know that there are specific school-specific questions that people have wanted to ask Wellesley and BU. And so I'm putting their contact information up here. Please take a screenshot if you'd like, and get in touch. Each of these schools have a lot of like school-specific webinars and things, and so they would love to answer your questions. And we at InitialView, like we just like race through all of this stuff. We actually do information sessions as well. So if more specific to kind of the nitty gritty. And so if you are a counselor and you're like, my students need to hear this, let me know. My contact information is on here as well. Would be happy to do another talk specifically about the nitty gritty. So once again, thank you everybody for joining us for Tuesday Talks. We will see you next week. We're going to talk about navigating applications. What's Common App? What's Coalition? What is Universal? What is all these things? We're going to talk about that. And so hope to see you then. In the meantime, you all have a wonderful afternoon, night, morning, wherever you are, and we will see you next week. Take care, everyone. Bye.